Viktor Frankl said, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's way." This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson. Stay tuned for the next hour as Sue explores the human psyche, what makes us tick, and how to live better, more fulfilled and more meaningful lives. Only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue Jackson on the Finding Human program on 101.9 High FM. My guest today is Robyn Smookler, and our topic is Joyzi Adar project. And we're going to be discussing that in a moment. If my voice is still sounding very strange, I have my daughter-in-law, Leanne, sitting beside me. And between the two of us wheezers, we're going to get through this program. I'll be handing over to Rob. It's wonderful to be with you and to be discussing your project. Now, Leanne and I both thought that this quote was you exactly. It's by Bob Marley, and it says, "The greatness of a man is not in how much wealth he acquires, but in his integrity and his ability to affect those around him positively." Did you hear that?
Yes, and good morning. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
It's a pleasure.
To be with you.
It's so wonderful having you, Rob. I actually contacted Robyn after she started this project to say I was incredibly moved by it and really enjoying it. And I asked her if she would come on my program, and thank goodness, here she is. She said yes. Rob, tell me about the motivation behind this program.
So yeah, thank you. And thank you. The response has been wonderful. So that's always heartening. But basically, usually for Adar, I do a gratitude challenge for the last many years, and Leanne's also been involved in those. I've done a gratitude challenge because I feel like if we really want to be joyful, we have to be grateful. And it sounds, gratitude's become such a buzzword, but I honestly believe if we integrated what it means to be grateful, and if we started looking at our lives in a different way, we would actually be joyful, no matter what's going on around us. So I've always done a gratitude challenge. And this year, I felt like people are, specifically in South Africa, there was a real heaviness. There are realities that are, difficult and challenging around us. And it's really, I feel like, it's overtaken all other goodness and really, really pulled people down. And when I thought about, are we going to do a gratitude challenge this year? I thought about it and I was like, imagine if we could see the place that we're living differently, and if we could find an energy of where we are that actually is so beautiful and so magical and so magnificent. So I thought it's interesting because Joburg and Joyzi are like the names that Johannesburg is called, and they both fit with joy. So I was like, should I call it Joyburg or should I call it Joyzi? But I loved like the colloquialness of Joyzi. Joyzi's like a fun name. It's like an affectionate name for Johannesburg. And I loved bringing joy to that. So it focuses on that. Joyzi, it's like our home. It's, it's fun, it's free. And also let's bring the joy. So that's really was the idea of starting this campaign. 30-day project.
And you've been involved in so many different projects, Rob, the swim Robyn Island, which we'll discuss just now. But Leanne's actually got something to read of one of your Joyzi Adar projects, one of the days.
We are wild and free. We are not Europe with their perfectly manicured lawns and strategically placed bus stops. We are Africa. We embrace the car guards at shopping centres because we are not paying exorbitant parking fees. And if we have nothing to give them a smile. It goes a long way. We have embraced load shedding. We plan around it and we enjoy the time out from technology and social media. And I must point out the positive. Eskom has been really good and consistent in keeping with their schedules. This is great. This is Africa. We have high levels of poverty. We are all trying our best. We are all battling, but again I say we are in it together. Food prices are high, but higher in other places around the world. God is alive in our society. Our people pray. Through the poverty, crime and desperation, there are smiles all around us. always try and find the beauty around you.
Now, Rob, that was so beautiful, and I'm sure you got many comments about that. And it is just so much. Right now, you are probably in load shedding. We're in load shedding. You might hear my inverter, and the studio's in load shedding. So I'm working from home on Zoom, and we're still. What's happening? We are still embracing one another and getting on with what we're supposed to do, which is sharing a positive message.
Yeah, so I love that you're saying this now, because you're saying we're both in load shedding. Load shedding couldn't be further away from my reality right now. Yes, I don't have power. So I was a little concerned, if my internet went down at home. So I left and I came, and I'm sitting now at the Royal Johannesburg Golf Course. And if I had to show you a photo of where I am, you'd say, are you somewhere exotic in Hawaii on some beautiful, magnificent, lush island? So although the reality is at 8 o'clock this morning, the power went off and it's coming back on whenever, we're living with this dichotomy of our external environment, which is noisy and challenging, and then we're living with the reality of what's in front of us, which is actually beautiful. I'm not like also blindsided and an ostrich with my head in the ground, not realizing that there are issues. But I feel like the issues are so external to the reality. Yes, they are there, and our financial situation is dire, and the electricity. But at the same time, while that's all happening, there is so much beauty and so much goodness, and it just depends where you choose to put your focus. It doesn't, other reality is as real. When people say, oh, you look with your rose-colored glasses, but you could also look with your black screens in front of your face. It's the same, It's just how you choose to want to feel, and how you choose to want to see the good.
Absolutely. And, I think if we do practice gratitude, it definitely helps us become more optimistic. And that the optimism and the gratitude, actually with humor often, and you definitely brought humor in, it definitely adds to our resilience and our ability to reach out to other people and to reach into ourselves too and see a different reality. And the Ram Dass, the monk, said, we're all just walking each other home. And I love that, because we are in this together. It's not that we can actually say, oh, Houghton is not in load shedding, or this one doesn't have it, or that one doesn't. We're all in this together. Rob,
absolutely.
In
Yes.
your own life, you have always practiced philanthropy. Where does that come from?
I was very, very close to my grandmother, who was a huge role model for me. And I just watched her, I think, my whole childhood. Like, they came from Lithuania, and they moved to Lichtenberg, and she just became like the women's guild there. So the whole every Shabbos, the whole shul, the kiddushes, her home, it was just an open, giving, loving home. But obviously, when I was born, they'd moved to Joburg. But I used to phone her and say, Gran, has your car been stolen? I see like an African gentleman driving the street. I just saw your car. And she said, no, I met this man and he's desperate to get his child somewhere. So I just gave him my car for the day. And
amazing.
I would see the most. She literally believed that material things were only there to be given or to be shared. There was nothing. There was no limitations of. She didn't have a lot, but whatever she had was for everybody. And I have the sense of like, we always arrived at her and she'd have yontifs and Shabboses, and we never knew the people who were there. She would just find people and bring them into her home and love them and care for them. And for her, there was no color, there was no limitations, there was no, but I don't know you, or who are you? There was just like, there's a human, we all need love, we all need care, so just care. And I hope that, something of that inspired me and God instilled in me, because I always just have her in mind, when you think like, oh, that's a stretch, or, that costs a lot. And I just think of her, it doesn't matter, when there's a job to do and when there's light to be brought into the world, you be the one to bring it.
That's wonderful. We'll get back to that shortly. Thank you, Craig.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue Jackson on 101.9 High FM, the Finding Human program. My guest today is Robyn Smookler, and my daughter-in-law Leanne and I are sitting here together on Zoom. If you would like to SMS us, please do so on 34519 or telegram us on 061 895 1019. Robyn, getting back to your grandma, Leanne, we were looking at this one thing about you which said, loaves made of love for Tata. Just read it, Lee, won't you?
In the Jewish
You've done your research.
Yeah, we have.
In the Jewish tradition, when someone is sick, the women come together to bake challah bread. This was Robyn Smookler and a group of other women who did this outside Nelson Mandela's home in Houghton. Robyn said, "We believe that if you give the first piece of dough to the priest, the blessings come into your home. Whatever lack you may have in your life, bread is our channel to bring blessings into the world."
Wonderful, Rob. That's what you said when you were outside Madiba, Nelson Mandela's home. Someone who certainly practiced and showed us how to practice gratitude and resilience. Oh, my word, unbelievable. So Leanne went on to tell me about your grandmother and her challah and how you took the first challah bake on. Tell me about that.
Sure, I didn't realize you had so much insider info. So it's something very, very special for me. So when my grandmother passed away, as I said, she used to just entertain. She actually, Stan and Pete was my uncle. So she helped to start Stan and Pete in her garage at home, and till the day she passed away, she was the baker for Stan and Pete. She made all the desserts. So baking was a big part of her life. So I was actually in Israel when she passed away. It was devastating for me to come home for her funeral. It was very sudden. And I came back and I was thinking that week, what could I really do to perpetuate her memory? Like to hold her essence in the world of her giving, her goodness, and of course her delicious food. So I thought, I'm not such a baker, on her level. She could literally go somewhere and taste anything and come home and replicate it exactly. So I'm not that, but I did feel like challah integrated her baking with bringing blessing into the world. So I knew I was going back to Jerusalem at the end of the week of Shiva, and I thought it would be so special, on a weekly basis. I could just invite friends who live in Israel and we could start baking challah. It's a consistent thing in her memory. So I did that.
Just explain what challah is. We've got a lot of listeners listening in.
Perfect. So it's known as different things. Some people call it kitka bread, but it's basically the braided bread that is very special that we eat on a Friday night. It's what we bless our, Shabbat is on the seventh day, very, very special, holy, beautiful day. And we use this bread as part of the blessing process. We could do a whole show just about challah, because it really is essence. I feel it's the essence of what we're doing in this world. We take mundane ingredients. I've been in the most bizarre places where I've walked into a shop and bought the ingredients for challah. It's basic flour, water, eggs, oil, sugar, easy ingredients. And I've always asked, like, how come something that's so holy and that's known to bring so much blessing is so mundane almost? And it really teaches us that there's nothing in this world that's mundane. There's nothing that's physical without potential for being uplifted into some spiritual purpose. So I love the idea of challah. I love how it's so simple, yet it brings the highest blessings. And it also weaves so many different ideas. It's full of contrasts. It's got the salt and the sweetness. It's got the wet and the dry. We're not going to go into the whole thing of challah.
Yeah, we'll do a program on it. We will.
Super. It's incredibly rich and deep and profound. So I was like, that's the thing I want to do for my grandmother. So I went back and it actually became like an event in Jerusalem. We used to all come to my apartment on a Thursday night, bake the dough, and then we'd actually go to Hebron, which is where the tomb of all our patriarchs and matriarchs. We used to go there, which is not the safest place, but like in the middle of the night, we do an all-nighter, come back and bake the bread. And it became like tourists who came to Jerusalem used to call me up and say, can we come? So it was a cool vibe, and I just loved that I could do that. About a few years later, a friend of mine's sister got very ill. She had cancer. Actually, it was Devorah, who now the DL Link organization is named after her. But I came back to South Africa, and I'm very close to the family. And we sat and we said, like, what can we do spiritually for her? Like, the doctors are doing everything in their power. Everything is happening. What can we do? And I had like a crazy idea. They totally laughed at me, but I said there is a power of 40 women joining together. We know 40 is the amount of days Moses went on the mountain. 40 is often a journey that pilgrimage take. I said, imagine if 40 is powerful. Why don't we try and bring 400 women together and bake challah? If there's a power in 40, there's got to be an amplified power in 400. They started laughing at me. Everyone was like, and what happens if there's 399 women? Do we cancel? What happens if there's 401? And we laughed about it. But I actually left that day and I said, I want to do this. And I remember phoning Gary Friedman, and he said to me, I'll give you my haul, I'll give you the HOD. And I phoned your family, Rand Plastics. Paul didn't even blink his eye. He said, come walk with me through my warehouse, tell me what bowls you need. It didn't even, I can't even say that we ran it, because honestly, some power took over this. At the end of the day, the night came, we called it a night of light, and there were 600 women in the room. And it was just candles and light and this energy that it honestly felt like the world shifted. So that was just
beautiful.
Yeah, it was spectacular. And also just thinking through, how do you bake it? You know, we didn't have ovens. Do we bring dough in? And I was insistent, I want each woman to have their own ingredients to bake it from scratch. So we worked that all out, put the model together. It was a magical project. And then about a few years later, the chief rabbi was initiating the Shabbos project for the first time. So I'd already built the model, had the whole concept. So then I partnered with him on saying, let's take 2,000 women, close off a street in Glen Hazel. Let's see what happens. It was funny. Like, my friends still remember, we walked, the one day we were walking to Shul, to the synagogue on Saturday. Someone stopped me and said, you know what, you've done some things, but this one you've gone mad. You've lost your mind. You can't close off a street. You're not going to get women. No function. Anyway, I heard all the naysayers, and we went ahead with it. And nearly 3,000 women arrived. And I remember saying to everyone, put up your hand if you're happy to share your bowl, because on both sides of the street, there were queues of people waiting to come in, but they didn't have tickets, and every single woman put up their hand and said, we're happy to share our bowl, and we let everybody in, and it was just something magical. And I think the pictures from there and the energy from there obviously took over and you know, went around the world quickly with social media. And then for the next year, I actually worked full-time on writing all the guides and getting the Challah Bake international for the next year. When the Shabbos project went internationally, the challah bake obviously happened all around the world, and a few million people were baking challah. But what Leanne would remember is then we went on a trip to Poland. And I remember, like, people were like, oh, 1 million people are now baking challah. What a brilliant idea, and like, what a concept. But for me, it was so important to go back to Poland and to go back to my roots of where obviously my grandmother and my family came from. And I remember hearing at Yad Vashem once, they said 6 million people is a story, is a number. One person is a story. And I said, I want this challah in Poland to be for one person, for my grandmother. And like,
wow, how wonderful.
Really full circle, bringing that back. And thank God it carries on. We do challah bakes all the time, and obviously it's gone on its own. Like now, pretty much bachelorettes and every function, and when someone's not well, straight away we call a challah bake. So it's become like
it's become
a
very
real way of bringing blessing.
Exactly. Rob, you know that the one thing that you do bring in so often is humor into the different things. And I've got one of your days here, one of your Joyzi Adar days that Leanne's going to read out.
This was day 6. It said, look for the helpers. There's no doubt that to live in South Africa, you have to have a good sense of humor. Often during load shedding, you find yourself at a major intersection where the robots are out and traffic begins to back up. You can almost be guaranteed that the street beggar or the broom fruit sellers will put down their sign asking for money or their wares that they're trying to sell and begin directing the traffic. They have no training, no understanding of the rules of the road, but they take the initiative, and the amazing thing is that they do create order and the drivers do follow their instructions. It definitely makes you laugh, but on further contemplation, it has an incredibly powerful underlying message. These are people who rely solely on the few coins they receive, but yet they're so much more invested in helping, in contributing and making a difference. South Africa is made up of good people who wanted to succeed and who do everything in their power to ensure its success. Living here begs the question, how can I help? How can I be a part of the solution?
That was so beautiful, Rob. I really, and you know, when Leanne and I were reading it, we both were laughing, even though we'd read it quite a few times. But I still laugh because, quite honestly, every time I do stop at a robot and see them all directing traffic in all directions, I do have a good laugh. And, you know, I was thinking during the night that the light that we share is actually the light that we spread. And that's exactly what you have done with this project. Tell me why you chose the month of Adar, and if you would tell our listeners who perhaps don't know which the month is and what it symbolizes, could you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, sure. So it's interesting when you speak about the humor. I'll go into Adar, but it was I thought about the idea, and then I thought, let's call it Joyzi, and I launched it. And literally, as soon as I started seeing people joining this group, I was like, oh, what am I actually going to say? I have no content. And then obviously living here, there's goodness everywhere. But I was like, I know it's going to sound crazy, but I didn't want it to be like, not that it's boring, but like, you know, this one did this good thing and that one gave a sandwich to someone, and that, which is amazing, and it happens all over. And also I didn't want to be preachy, like we should all live in South Africa and no one should leave. And also I didn't want it to be heavy, and I didn't want it to be, so once I'd like decided to do this, I was like, wow, this is like a very tricky balance. And also Adar is a Jewish month, and I was like, it's obviously going to speak to Jewish people, but there are also a lot of people on the group who are not Jewish. So I wanted it to be as relevant for any South African. And on the other hand, there's people overseas, so you don't want it to be. A lot of them are homesick, and a lot of my friends I know are, you know, struggle where they're living and miss South Africa. And a few actually left the group and messaged and said, I'm sorry, it's just literally making us too homesick. So it was a difficult balance, and thank you for acknowledging. Like, I'm so happy that you can chuckle, and I thought there is also a beautiful side to that, even though I love it, and it's without fail. When there's load shedding, you see every robot, they take control, and the beggars get involved.
And you call them the helpers. I love that. You call them the helpers, Rob. Sorry, so what do you do for Adar?
I'm saying it blows my mind that they literally could earn so much more when the traffic is backed up than helping, but they help. And that just like blows me away. And so Adar is every Jewish month, we actually go according to the lunar calendar, not the solar calendar. So it does overlap the, you know, like January, February in some way, but it's also a completely different calendar. And each month holds a very specific energy. We know that, you know, we should always be working on character development, but each month there's a specific thing that we should focus our attention on. And Adar, this month, this Jewish month, is known as the month of joy. And why is it such a joyful month? Is in the midst, exactly in the middle of this month, we have a festival which is called Purim, where literally against all odds, it was the darkest situation. It looked like the Jews were about to be annihilated. You know, there was no hope, and through prayer and through human intervention, everything turned around. And obviously God's help, because nothing happens without God's help. But it's become known as the month of joy. And for me, I always feel like it's not a cute idea, and it doesn't say to us, you know, try to be happy if you can. It says when this month comes, you have to increase your joy. But I feel like we have to look at what is joy. I don't believe it's dancing on tables, having tequila. Sometimes that's fun. You can have tequilas, you can have shots, you can dance, and you can go wild. But I feel like joy is honestly a very deep internal feeling where you feel like my soul is aligned with my purpose, where you feel like, light is overshadowing darkness, and where you feel like you matter, and where you feel like, life feels like sometimes life feels completely crazy and just upside down and unmanageable. And I always feel like, I don't know if I hope that I can have some impact, but to try and instill a deeper joy in people this month. So as I said to you, I'm sitting here in load shedding. There are probably other people who are like, oh, I can't believe it again, and it's in the middle. And like I'm sitting here on a golf course and loving life. Like when you say load shedding, I'm like, okay, what is it? Like, it doesn't matter. So I think that joy is to tap into the goodness that's always there, and it's inherent, and to live with purpose and to live with meaning, exactly what your show is and exactly who you are. That's really what I try and instill, and it actually comes with a mind shift. You can't be in a world of complaining and, oh, this is so bad and this has got worse. I feel like if you're there, then try and find a better solution, leave and try and make things better. But if you're in a situation, try and find the good and try and look for it. And I hope through Adar, and we do these little challenges, it's like 30 days, but I really do hope that it can have some kind of transformative shift where people start, driving around and actually seeing.
We've got a few messages for you, but one has come through from Judy in Australia, and she says, Sue, best show ever, and she sends kisses. Thank you, Jude. Okay, Lee, you've got a few messages.
Yeah, especially because, Rob, you sit there and you say, you hope you're making an impact on people. You have no idea the impact you always make on people. So there's so many messages, we can't even read them all out. So Terry says it's like sipping that glass of chilled white wine at the end of the day, when reality is just too ugly. And Rob's messages remind us to look for the good, appreciate the moment, and be inspired by the ordinary. Then Leora says, in terms of Rob's messages, it feels like life feels so difficult for everyone right now. Between the rising cost of living, constant load shedding, and just generally feeling like we have all been just barely hanging on for so long with no end in sight. It is so easy to get caught up and bogged down in all the things that are wrong. I think it is so special to even just have that one moment in the day when Rob's messages come through to remind us that there are still good things out there. And if we choose to, we can acknowledge them.
Yeah, Rita, there's a couple more. We'll sort of do them every now and again.
Lauren says she's completely inspiring and Hashem has gifted her to teach us such practical life skills. At the moment, I'm getting so many WhatsApps, and Robyn's is the only one I'm managing to read every day. The very real life experiences and so practical to use in every day. They are short and to the point. The messages are so profound. I can't wait to read them every day. I've got so much inspiration out of them. We are so blessed to be a Jew in South Africa.
Just there's one there that's from Paul, my son-in-law, Paul, and because you mentioned him, just want to tell you what he had to say.
Paul says, wow, she really knows how to capture the essence of our soul as a nation. The Bantu runs through the veins of our people.
And, Rob, the Ubuntu and the Tikkun Olam, do you want to just discuss that for a moment? But actually, first of all, there's a message that has come through from Judy Moritz, and she says, Robyn, you rock, my darling. And then she says, well done to Leanne and I. And we're just going to a break for a moment. Thank you, Craig.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
We're back with Robyn Smookler, and we've been discussing her project, Joyzi or Joyzi, whatever you want to call it, Adar project. And there's just been so many messages that have come through. So, Rob, what is it actually doing to your soul? Because the psychologist Robert Emmons, who's an expert on gratitude, defines gratitude as the ability to recognize goodness in our life due to the surroundings, which you're in right now, as well as actions of another person, a group of people, And the gratitude, if acknowledged in uncertain times, helps us recognize the goodness of our lives, and which helps us calm the fear and the anxiety. Do you agree with that? That it does calm the fear and anxiety?
Well, if I can say one thing, you asked me to come on the show and hopefully give a message to others and a bit of inspiration. But I'm personally so inspired just by who you are, by what you've read out, by those messages. And I'm sitting here thinking, I shouldn't be this inspired and like grateful for the show. Like I was meant to come here and give something. I feel like, and there's the Hebrew word, which is natan, which is the word for giving. It's a palindrome. And it says, so often in giving, the receiving is as great. We don't even know where the giving ends and the receiving begins. So I feel like, when you say that, like when you put out goodness or when you look with a good eye, the goodness that comes back to you is infinite fold. And I don't think we should ever do goodness, waiting for something. It should always just be pure. But the knock-on effect is always profound. And it's interesting, like you say, what has this done to me? So obviously wherever I go now, I'm like looking for the object, I'm looking for the story, I'm looking for what I can share. So on Sunday evening, if we have 2 minutes, I'll quickly share a story. So we were going to Santa and we were going to see a show. And as we got there, we hit an island that wasn't clear, and the tire burst. A friend of mine was driving, and her tire popped. And we were now stuck on the side of the road near the Gautrain train station, which, if anybody knows, there's a lot of hot issues there with Uber drivers and taxis and fighting. And there's a lot of street traffic, people walking, and it was in the night and it was Sunday evening. So our first thought was like, phone CSO and CAT, let's get protection. Within 1 second, you have a call, a place to call. They were like, no problem, tell us where you are, we're sending a van straight away. So we already felt, okay, our backs are covered. The next thing that happened completely blew us away. We were standing there, all women, and obviously a little bit concerned for our safety. And the next thing, this African gentleman came up to us and he said, what's wrong, are you okay? We said, we have a flat. He said, okay, don't worry. I've got this, I'm going to help you. And we knew, like we could feel he was a good, safe, beautiful human. And he straight away took out the jack from the boot and he started trying to fix our tire. Unfortunately, he wasn't like a mechanic, so he couldn't get the hubcaps off and he couldn't. But then somebody else had come and said, what's happening? Let me help you. He got involved. Then the security guard arrived and he said, why are you guys here? It's not safe. So we said, no, we have a flat. He said, I'm staying here. I'm not leaving your side till your tire is changed. And within 5, and then another guy came to help, and we said to him, you know what, the best help would be just keep people away. We just want to quietly change the tire. And he became like the bodyguard. He was saying to people, no, and everyone was only coming to ask if they could help. And it was and actually Cap, we gave they got the wrong address, so it took them a long time. But the whole time they were on the phone with us and trying to find us. But it was actually like also quite amazing that they did come so late, because we got this experience of being vulnerable, being in a place where we thought was unsafe, but actually we were like surrounded by this bubble of security, of helpers. As we say, look for the helpers
and carers,
and no one would put themselves into the situation to do an experiment and they didn't stop until, and then like when we gave them something, they're like, no, you don't. And we're like, no, thank you, we're so grateful. But they didn't expect anything. They literally wouldn't leave our side until, and then Cap came right at the end when the last screw was, but he also, and he's like, can I follow you home, and can we take the tire to be pumped, and it was just like so heartening to feel like we live with a fear reality of almost anticipating that this isn't safe. I always laugh. Nobody would ever walk in the streets at night in Joburg. You think it's not safe. But if you come to the Jewish areas on a Friday night, you're going to see masses of people walking. And I keep thinking, like, what's the difference between Tuesday night and Friday night? We just have a sense of security. So I think we do need to upgrade our thinking in terms of how dangerous things are and how vulnerable we are. I think we're actually much more safe and protected than what we think.
Isn't that a nice thought? I've just got a message from Judy in Australia, and she said that that message was not from her. So I think that must have been from Judy Moritz. But she says that it is an inspiring program, and Robyn is very impressive. A wonderful project. So thank you, Jude. You know, I just need to say something about gratitude there, because what you've just been explaining is almost like a circle of gratitude, that one person starts it and then another person comes, and it becomes like this circle of people willing to give. And I think that often happens with friendships and with groups. And you know, while Judy, I know, is listening in Australia, every week she sends me a couple of beautiful photos that Les, who's also her husband, a very good friend of mine, also takes of the most wonderful scenery around Sydney and wherever he has been. And I just appreciate what they send. And it's almost like a glow in my own life when these photographs come. And it is this circle, Rob, this, you know, even I can, like you and Leanne and I sitting here, we have a circle of connection that often we don't allow ourselves to even recognize, but it's there and we can tap into it and just appreciate it and feel gratitude for it. Now, Lee, you've got another few messages to read out.
So here's another message, actually for me.
This from Leanne.
I've always managed to find ways to be positive and rise above the negativity that surrounds us on a daily basis. This year, I found it really hard to find ways. Rob's daily messages have been just the thing I needed. Each day, each story so unique, each one more uplifting than the next. Each day, the words give me the inspiration to find meaning, positivity, and gratitude in my life. I'm so grateful for these daily messages. Rob, you are a true inspiration.
It's lovely, Lee. And then another one.
This is from Jean. Reading Robyn's messages has had such an uplifting effect on my days. Knowing that there is caring and kindness in a chaotic country fills me with hope and the will to help where I can, even if it is only a small thing. Thanks, Robyn, for making me smile and realize I'm loved together with so many others.
Also, beautiful message, that, Jean. Thank you.
And this is from Jen. It says, you don't have to be Jewish to enjoy Robyn's daily dose of inspiration. Thank you, Robyn.
So, Rob, those were a few of them. And do you want to hear Lee read back another one of your project messages? Shall we do that? Okay, Rob? Okay. Craig's saying we're just going to break for a moment.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue Jackson, and I'm back with Robyn Smookler, and Leanne Jackson is sitting next to me. And I would like to thank Makundi and Busi and Craig for keeping us on air. And Rob, you know that you sent a message out. We're going to be told shortly to actually start wrapping up. So I wanted you just to mention one of the later messages that you put out about the music keeps playing, and I love that. Do you want to just tell us a bit about how that came to you? I know it was a Facebook, I think, post first.
Yeah, so I think also what I'm looking for in this is that African spirit, you know. So the music goes on, and I feel like, thank you for bringing that up, because I feel like that's a theme. It's like, yes, there's craziness, but the show goes on here and the music carries on. So that specific day was a story about, at the Linda Auditorium, they had a very big musical with the symphony orchestra, you know, big production. And a few minutes into the show, there was load shedding, and they assumed that the generator would just kick in and the show would literally go on. So it didn't kick in. And then for a minute it came back on, and then it went off again. And instead of canceling the show or, you know, stopping the performance, they actually just continued to play with no fancy lights and with no fancy sound equipment, but just the pure music. And the beautiful thing is how it was received, that everybody in the audience sat in awe, and it almost enhanced what the original experience was. It didn't, it wasn't like, oh, now we've paid and the lights went off. It almost made the show. So I just love that. It's firstly that musicians just felt the confidence and obviously the energy to carry on, and that the audience could receive it so warmly. And I think that really is a lesson for us. When I look now at what's going on in other countries around the world, I know our problems are not small, but it almost does make them seem a lot smaller. I'm like, thank God, we have a lot of things that our lives aren't in danger on a daily basis. And yeah, like financially, and there are challenges and there's difficulty, but our music does go on here. And the people who invested and the people who the helpers and the builders and the givers have a lot to contribute, which is also a blessing.
And right now, the Hardy Dars are agreeing with you. Another message has come through from Annette Berger. Thank you for a beautiful and inspiring interview. Much love, Annette. And we've been told to wrap up, Rob. We're going to actually be ending shortly. I would just like people, if they would like to hear something from Deepak Chopra or read one, is a wonderful a message that he put out, the victory of hope over uncertainty. And it's very definitely about how life's uncertainties at the moment seem to be so exaggerated. It's worth listening to. The Rebbe says to be kind is more important than to be right. Many times what people need is not a brilliant mind that speaks, but a special heart that listens. Right now we're going to be listening to the Kipnes and Rushorn. It's a beautiful day, which you had on your project. And Robyn,
Beautiful.
there is so much more to discuss. Thank you so much for being with us today and sharing part of yourself. And please go on with this project. Lee, would you like to give a message to Rob?
Rob, just never ever stop doing what you're doing, because if you actually realized the amount of people all around the world that you impact and inspire, you're amazing, and this is your gift that you have to carry on giving to the world.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. If I could leave us all with a blessing, it's to just quieten the outside noise and to switch up that inner music and find the peace and the all that we need is within us. So yeah, just bless us that the music should go on and it should be beautiful. And thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you, Robyn. Amen to that. And thank you, Craig. If you'll just put on that Kipnes and Rishon. It's a beautiful day.